For a long time, if anybody asked me to pick my personal favorite out of all the books I've written, I usually would say The Destiny of a Galaxy. It was a very emotional book for me to write, edit, and publish, not just because it was the end of a series, but simply there was a lot in there that God used to touch my heart and move me. But Dreams and Devotion has become on equal footing with it. It's probably the hardest one for me to accept criticism about. Usually when people post critical reviews, I'm just like, no big deal. A lot of times I'm like, well, that's the most negative review I get, and that's awesome because it will help me. But definitely there are certain books it's harder though to accept critical reviews, and Dreams and Devotion is definitely going to be one of them, simply because it's so close to my heart. It is kind of back more towards Adventures of Earthseas and feel. We're back to talking about a peasant girl named Dara who's living kind of a life you would imagine Alditha would have lived if she hadn't gone to Castle Belmore. Very much just, she's a farmer's daughter, and with some interesting kinks in her life because her father was crippled, and so her brothers have worked the land since they were younger, and you have when her oldest brother is given an opportunity to become a priest, and he's always just had this heart for God, and so he accepts and leaves with everyone in his family's blessing, but always that's a little hard to see things changing. But this story really deals with what happens when somebody you should be able to rely upon wounds you, sins, honestly, just not even just sins, and causes a lot of wounds. Because one of the things that often we don't deal with in a lot of fiction is really just the consequences for one person's actions, unless they're a villain. Obviously we see villains often, the consequences of their actions, and in this case, this is just one person's selfishness costs these two siblings a great deal, because we switch between Dara and Dresden's perspective, and it was just a lot of those emotions and stuff were things I dealt with, and it was very extremely helpful for me to write it. It really helped me deal with a lot of the emotions itself, just in writing it and then in editing it and being reminded of the godly way to respond, and seeing the different ways to responding. Really, Dara and Dresden both represent me, even though I split kind of my reactions to thing into two people, because I think that not often do we all, but there are pieces of me in both of them. It's there's definitely a lot of me in both characters, and I also just put some things in there that definitely connect to some things my family's gone through, and I dedicated this book, Dreams and Devotion, to my dad. I've been going through my siblings through the various books, but this book I really wanted to dedicate to my dad, because he has been just there for me so many times, and because it's just, my dad and mom both helped me through a lot of just emotions that I was dealing with before I even started writing this book. It's hard to talk about Dreams and Devotion much, because to say much will give a lot away. But if you read it and have questions, I'd be happy to answer them. And if you look below this video, you'll see today's goodie.